guys on thanks for y'all. Shoulders on ice for y'all. 8-6 all the hay. I won't get involved today. Got lost in the ball and A's. I'm flipping the bars, I'm flipping the.
Hello Tattooed Athletic Club and welcome to another edition of Tattooed Athlete. I'm super excited today to be joined by my man Chris Holt. Chris, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. Super stoked about this. This is very exciting.
Hey.
I remember us having the initial conversations about the concept of this, and it looks like it's taken off.
Right, yeah, to touch on that, when I started thinking, hey, I want to connect tattoos and fitness, Chris is one of the first people I talked to. Because if you can't tell, Chris knows a thing or two about tattoos and fitness. So we're actually here at CrossFit EMC in Salt Lake City, Utah. But Chris, before we get into your tattoos, I'd love to hear about your fitness journey that got us in this CrossFit gym today.
Yeah, so fitness for me kind of started with sports. I played a lot of sports growing up in high school, middle school, stuff like that. And then it led into weight training and then stuff like that. So for me, CrossFit, I just followed .com, so it was just looking at the workout of the day, getting excited about what we were going to do, and then basically go in the gym and throw up. So that was pretty much my introduction to CrossFit. But yeah, I mean, it really started with sports, and then you realize, I realized very quickly that I'm not talented when it comes to sports. I was always the athlete that had worked like 10 times harder just to be mediocre. So I realized, my aspirations to be a professional athlete were probably not going to happen, so I found more kind of just exercise in general as an outlet, and obviously I enjoyed it, and guys always want to get jacked and ripped and then jacked and then ripped and then there's ebbs and flows, so yeah, kind of found it that way. So.
Right. So when did you start CrossFit then?
I started CrossFit in 2005. I saw the movie 300 like everyone else,
Yeah.
and I was like, well, those guys look really, really amazing.
I want to look like that.
Yeah. So I did some research. I found out that they were training with the gym here, actually in Salt Lake, called Jim Jones, with Mark Twight. So I followed Jim Jones for a year, not knowing that Jim Jones had really been taught by Glassman a lot of their methodologies, as much as they are very different now. That's kind of how it all happened. Because on Jim Jones' original WordPress website, they would have workouts of the day, and they'd call like Fran via CrossFit. I'm like, what's CrossFit? And I click on the link, and it was CrossFit.com. So I was like, oh, like this is what they're doing. Okay, so then I started following .com, and yeah, I mean, I remember I was in college, and I was like running between like a pull-up bar and a bench and a box and dumbbells, and I was sweating and breathing heavy, and people were just confused. They're like, where's the flash, man? Where's the fire?
Yeah.
Why don't you calm down? Like, get some water. I'm like, no, man, I'm timing this.
Right.
They're like, what is
Gotta
that?
go. Yeah.
So I went through a lot of workout partners because I didn't understand the idea of scaling. So I was like, all right, we're going to do Fran today. You're doing 95 pounds. I'm doing 95 pounds.
Yes.
And then I'd run into these guys on campus. Hey, we're going to work out again. They were like, oh, man, I got like a paper I got to do, or came up with some excuse. So that was pretty much when I started doing it, just recreationally.
Sure. And then, I mean, on top of then being an incredible athlete yourself, you've also then got into coaching in nutrition and gym owning and all of that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah, so I went to college for architecture, so I'm an architect originally. I graduated from the University of Miami in 2006. Worked for a firm for a couple of years in Miami, and then 2008 hit, the economy stopped, everything stopped, building stopped, and then I decided to leave that profession to open my affiliate in Miami called CrossFit Threshold. We opened in 2008. So we're not the first, but we're the oldest affiliate still in business.
Cool.
Going on 12 years or 13 years now or whatever. So yeah, I opened that gym in 2008. Owned and operated that with my business partners, which eventually just turned to one business partner, Tony, for about a decade, and then I moved out here in 2018. So.
I actually got to watch you do a pretty incredible feat last May. So for those of you who don't know, in the CrossFit space, there's a massive workout to remember Michael Murphy. On Memorial Day, it's called Murph, and for us mortal people, it's a difficult workout. It takes about an hour. That is a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 air squats, and then another mile run. But I actually, Chris, got to watch you do double Murph. Can you touch on that?
Yeah, so Murph is a workout that I do a lot. It's probably one of my favorite hero workouts that we do in CrossFit. Over the years, I've just done different iterations of it, made it kind of more challenging for me. So I've done it at a 50-pound vest. I've done double Murph many times. I've done, double Murph in seal fit gear, so boots and pants and all this stuff. So for me, it was just something I've always done. And then I have a sponsor called 10,000. They are an apparel company, and they reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we're doing this thing called Pizza Strength, and we heard you did a double Murph." And I was like, "Yeah, no big deal." And they're like, "Oh, well, will you do it? And we can document it and promote it." And I'm like, "Yeah, I don't mind." So they made it challenging because they were like, "All right, we want you to wear a vest." And I was like, "I have a 30-pound vest." They're like, "Perfect." And I'm like, "Okay." And then they said, "Oh, with the running, can you do it on an air runner?" I'm like, "You do understand that that's way harder to run on an air runner than it is running outside." And they're like, yeah, but it's going to be great. Bobby Maximus was there. He's also a captain on our 10,000 team. He's a former MMA fighter. So I just didn't want to look like a loser.
Right.
Like a wuss. So I was like, you can't walk. Just Bobby Maximus is right there.
Yeah.
Just keep moving. So.
Right. Well, it was pretty incredible to watch him do this already difficult workout and do it twice. So Chris, thanks for putting on that little show, and we'll see you Memorial Day again, I'm sure. I'd love to dig into your tattoos, and I know you've got some incredible stories. But to get things started, I'd love to hear about your first one and kind of the story behind it.
First tattoo was my Nautical Star on my chest. I remember I wanted a tattoo. I didn't think I was going to get that many. I just thought I'll get one. And I had done research. And again, Nautical Stars I've done all the time. But for me, the story that I read was that sailors back in the day used to get them tattooed on them because they used the stars as guidance when they're out at sea. So it was this kind of symbol of security, guidance, kind of like, this beacon, so to speak. And so I kind of liked that. And since I lived overseas most of my life, I wanted to put that star over my heart because that's where I held my memories. So I went with one of my best friends to get this done at a place in South Beach called Tattoos by Lou. And I'll never forget the guy. He was a terrible tattoo artist, terrible. This still hasn't healed properly, but went with my best friend. He got the same star on his back. He's not gonna like me saying this, but he totally passed out,
oh jeez,
fainted, and I just couldn't get over it. I had to give him a ginger ale or whatever. He claims that he didn't pass out, but he totally passed out.
Totally passed out. Yeah.
But that was the first tattoo.
Very cool. And so, did you wait a little while and then get the next one, or did you just kind of take off and got super into it?
It's kind of a blur. I get asked that question a lot. I think once you decide you're going to do a lot of coverage, you want to do bigger pieces. You don't want to piece things together and fill in blanks, which obviously I have a lot of blanks still. But no, I think I made it a conscious decision that I was going to start to heavily tattoo myself, and it was a lot of things. At the time I was totally obsessed with Blink-182, and Travis Barker was my favorite musician, still is.
Right.
And I just loved his tattoos, and I like the look of it. So, so most of my tattoos really revolve around either my life living overseas, my family, or as I get more coverage, it's just more things that, like my neck sleeve doesn't have a meaning, it's just more of a showstopper, and that's what we kind of designed it as. So, as much as I do believe that, for me anyway, I want my tattoos to more or less mean something to me.
Sure.
At the end of the day, people ask me all the time, does it have to have a meaning? I'm like, no. If you like unicorns and you want to get a unicorn tattoo on your arm, who cares? As long as it brings you joy, do whatever you want, man. I get asked so many questions. I want to get a tattoo. I want to get my first tattoo. What should I get? I'm like, that is not for me to say.
Right.
I don't know you.
Right.
I don't know what you like or anything like that, or your interests or your background. So that is too personal for me to chime in.
Sure. Well, and a lot of people do, I think, go through a process of okay, well, I had this thing happen in my life, or something impactful has happened, so I got this tattoo. Or have there been things for you that have kind of steered you in that direction?
Yeah, I think one of my first tattoos was the word clarity, which is down my ribs. And I remember it was I think it might have been my third tattoo, and I remember the artist that I was going to at the time in Miami, he was like, hey man, that's a really painful area, and you just jump in there, you don't want to go on the outside of your arm or anything. I'm like, no, let's go ribs, because for me, I've also had 4 lung surgeries and many lung collapses and partial collapses. since I was 16. So for me, I just remember being in a hospital, living in a hospital basically, and just thinking that when you're faced with extreme pain, like physical pain, I'm telling you, you have these moments of clarity where you just truly see what's important to you, and then the things that aren't that important, which you may think are important, just kind of wash away. So that was really the purpose of that tattoo. And then I was like, all right, I want my tattoos to really have some driving meaning. And I always tell people, look, if you don't know what you want to get and you're scared of the idea of it being permanent, I say, look, just try to find something that's a constant that will never change. And so for me, living overseas, that's just a fact of my life, and that's why I did more stuff. And so, yeah, I think a lot of people, when it comes to like trauma, for sure, I think trauma is obviously trauma, but I don't do it as a negative thing. I think it helps us put things in perspective and give us a good perspective, and sometimes those are the things you want tattooed on.
And I do want to kind of come back because you know, we both kind of mentioned it, a lot of people's tattoos are meaningful, or there was a trauma or something like that, which for me is what has made this project really cool, right? Is like so many of us are connected through our fitness, right? We see each other in the gym, and we see each other's workouts on social media or whatever that is, but then the fact that we can connect on a deeper level behind our tattoos has been really fun for me. So I know that you've had some different connections. Your brother is into tattoos as well. You are great about finding artists and getting into their artistic abilities as well. So kind of what's your process when it comes to like, maybe it's connecting with people on their tattoos or connecting with artists?
I think that tattoos are just like any art form and expression, and sometimes, you know, I always think about my tattoos. I'm like, wow, like I told myself I would never tattoo my legs, I would never tattoo my back, I would never tattoo my hands, I would never tattoo my ears, I would never tattoo my neck. Obviously all that didn't happen. So for me, I think it's a way for me to express myself in a way that I just can't do any other way. And that might obviously require the talents of another artist. Because tattooing is just a very unique medium in terms of art forms in general. But I think for me, I like the fact that tattoos are becoming obviously way more accepted. When I was working in architecture, I had to cover my half sleeve all the time. And now it's like, no one gives a shit. So it's like, that's kind of cool to see that happen. And I think that also plays into just seeing more, unfortunately, like, you know, celebrities and people of, you know, influence sporting tattoos, that it just doesn't seem so taboo. Because before, I mean, the number one question I get on all my social media platforms when I do live videos is, did you go to prison? Are you in the Yakuza? Are you in a gang? And it's just like, look,
come on now, we're past that.
Yeah. So for me though, you know, one of my trouble brothers is getting heavily tattooed right now, and he was very picky about the style, the artist. He wanted people that either were famous or, you know, were very unique in terms of their style of tattooing. So, you know, he always teases me sometimes and just says, oh man, look at all your other tattoos, they kind of look shitty. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, they just look like any other tattoo. That's not really great work. And I said, look, you need to understand the context. I was in college, I didn't have a lot of money, and I started getting tattooed. So yeah, sure, hindsight's 20/20, and if I could do it all over again, maybe I would change that. Right. But ultimately, I like my tattoos, and I like, you know, my artist in California, Nakona, we always talk about this idea of the full bodysuit, and it's something that I want to work towards. But you know, when you think about Japanese style full bodysuits, those things are just like a cohesive piece telling a story. But what people don't realize is typically those full bodysuits are done by artists that don't give the client a choice. It's like your canvas, I'm going to tell a story, I'm a famous artist, so you just sit there.
Yeah.
And so I think what's happening nowadays is that you're seeing more what I consider like modern day bodysuits, which are people like myself that started getting tattooed and then realized, all right, now I'm going to do some heavy coverage, so I'm going to have to fill in spots and like make it look more cohesive, like a full piece. So for me, moving forward, I only really am focused on large pieces because I want to just get coverage done. I mean, even my back piece, I don't have a lot of color on it because I never see it.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be super detailed and like the best. It
Right.
just needs to look complete, you know?
Right.
So.
Yeah, but I think that is really cool, right? Like, you talk about, okay, well, I got this when I was in college, I don't have a lot of money, but it is telling a story, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
that was meaningful and awesome to you at the time, so yeah, there is no point in me looking at maybe the first tattoo I got and be like, oh, there's some lines myself. Well, I'm sure they are. I went to the cheapest person I could find.
Yeah, and people always ask me, do you regret any of them? I'm like, I wouldn't say that I regret any of my tattoos whatsoever. I mean, yeah, there are some I might want to cover up, but I don't really regret it because at the end of the day, everything we go through in life, good or bad, is part of our development. So if you're happy with where you're at right now, then every shitty thing that happened to you before, you should be grateful for, because without it, you would be a different person, essentially. So, yeah, you got to take the good with the bad. And, you know, especially for me, you know, because I've suffered from mental health issues most of my life, I think that the tattooing, and especially exercise, I think just putting yourself through like uncomfortable situations physically, they allow me to just kind of like not think about the stuff that bothers me or the things that are constantly plaguing my mind every day. So yeah, and one thing I will say is as you age, tattooing hurts more. So like I just want to get as much done as I can. I don't want to be 50 getting more tattoos.
Right.
But again, I say that now.
You never know. Right. So for you did mention it a little bit, but you do have pieces, and then there's some larger pieces. Do you have things on you that you'd like to talk about that are, you know, maybe stand out as more important than the others?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece right now is, I'm still working on, it's my full leg sleeve that connects to my back. And that's kind of a funny story because my brother Justin, who's also getting tattooed, the artist that did my back, my leg, and my neck, that was my brother's first artist. So there's an ongoing kind of joke amongst my brothers and I, because I am a triplet, that growing up I was always the first to do something, and then my brothers would copy me. So I was like, yeah, you guys are always copying me. Like this will sound stupid, but I found Tommy Hilfiger when it was super popular and like really cool to wear, and I look at some of the clothes and I'm like, that is hideous. Like, who would wear that shit? But they started wearing Tommy Hilfiger, and then it was like all these things. So then Justin, I got my first tattoo, and then Justin got tattooed, and I'm like, look, you're fucking copying me again. And so he got his left arm sleeve is 3 koi fish that kind of turned into a dragon over his shoulder, and so he had kind of researched the story of the koi, and the story goes that they swim up the red river, and the ones that make it to the top of the river blossom into dragons. So it's this idea of perseverance. And he did 3 koi fish to represent us as triplets. So he had this sleeve done, and it was just really well done. Like the line weights, the shading, the colors, just everything just looked more artistic than just like a kind of Americana tattoo, like a dagger or some panther or something. So I started going to Nakona, and I just told my brother, I'm like, you know what? All the years you copied me, I'm gonna one up you. I'm gonna do 3 koi fish going up my leg, and it's gonna blossom into a dragon on my back. And Justin says, you're not gonna do that. That's too much work. I'm like, watch me.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
So that's what you're working on now.
Yeah, it's pretty much done minus the thigh, and then like under the butt cheeks, which is just terrible.
Yeah.
And then this piece will be done. So.
Right. So, of all your tattoos, what area kind of hurt the worst, other than the butt cheeks?
This is another question I get a lot, and I think it depends on the person, because I have friends that are heavily tattooed, and they said, "Oh, the belly wasn't that bad," and other people say the stomach is terrible. I think it's safe to say, for the average person, top of the foot, belly, ribs, inner arms, any non-bumping surface is going to be a little more tender than others. For me, the worst spots were like my ears, parts of my knuckles, my tailbones. Terrible. I remember my tailbone, that session was being done in a museum in Vermont at Middlebury College. At the time, my sister-in-law, who's no longer my sister-in-law, was a curator and a professor at Middlebury College. So she had somehow gotten a very famous tattoo exhibit, a photo exhibit, to come to her museum. It's called Perseverance, and I think it started in Japan. It basically documents 10 famous Japanese tattoo artists that all specialize in full body suits. Okay. So a lot of them have tattooed yakuza. So there's this one crime box. I remember seeing this photo. They're huge. They're full color. They're 1-to-1 scale. And it's this Yakuza boss. He's got this gold Rolex. He's in a traditional garb, and he's got a full tuxedo bodysuit, and just looks badass. And the guy doesn't exist anymore because he was put to death. But seeing the work, and what was interesting is she got the exhibit to come to the museum, and she called me and she said, "Hey, do you have more work to do?" I'm like, "Tons." She's like, "Well, I talked to the board directors. They're willing to fly you and Nakona out to do a live exhibit to show people what it takes to get tattooed." And I'm like, "I got a tattoo on my ass. That's okay, right?" She's like, "It's up." I'm like, "Okay, as long as everyone's okay with that." So it was really amazing because we flew up there during the summer. That museum maybe gets like, I think she said maybe like 50 visitors on Saturday. And because they promoted it and like jumped through all the hoops of getting a live studio set up in the museum, I think they had like 300 to 400 people go through the museum that day. And it was cool because people could ask questions. And as much as I was just kind of like naked lying on the table, when they saw the exhibit, they came and saw the tattooing, and in 8 hours, which we tattooed for about 8 or 9 hours, we didn't get a lot done.
Yeah.
And they're like, "That's all you got done in 8 hours?" And those people in those photos are like fully suited, like, whoa. And so we changed a lot of people's perspective because most of them said, "I don't like tattoos, I don't agree with them, I don't understand them, but I can now respect them because I can see how much time it takes to, put into that." But what happened during that session is that they were doing a Facebook Live video, and Nakona started tattooing my tailbone, and I grabbed him, and stop. He was like, "What?" And I was like, "I feel like I'm gonna shit myself." He's like, "Oh, yeah, that might happen." I'm like, "What do you mean that might happen? There's 150 people here. They're doing a Facebook Live video. That cannot happen." I said, "It feels like you're violating." And then he pauses. He says, "I am violating you.
Yeah. And
you're paying me." And I was like, "Okay, let's just get this done."
Yeah.
So tailbone was terrible. Groin was terrible. Behind the knee. And for me, surprisingly, low back. So anyone that has like a tramp stamp, I give a lot of respect to. Because low back for me was really
not good. And Chris, we did postpone the interview. I wanted to do a while back, but you had a tattoo planned. Do you want to touch on what your most recent tattoo was?
Yeah, it's my neck sleeve, which is a big step for anyone because it is extremely visible. So I was supposed to finish my thigh and my whole piece with Nakona, and then, I just called him and said, "Hey, no one sees my ass or my leg. Let's just do a neck sleeve." So he was all down for that. So we decided to do something that was going to be a little more of a showstopper. It didn't really need to have much meaning to me. I just wanted something that I thought looked nice, obviously with line weights and shading and stuff like that. So all the thick black lines were actually freehand drawn on. So, that's also a little nerve-wracking. But yeah, we did 2 days back to back, which is not something I would recommend. It was about 4.5 hours per session, so about a little over 9 hours of work. But yeah, went really well and super happy with it. And of course, Nakona is so good at tattooing with regards to understanding skin and other things like that. But any tattoo I've ever gotten from him heals within 6 days. So.
Right, and did you go to him with like a general theme, or was it like, "Hey, I want to do my neck, here's what it looks like"?
With Nakona, I just told him I just want geometric patterns.
Cool.
And so I trust him, and that's another thing. I think anyone that's getting into tattooing and is looking for an artist, if you're picking an artist because of their work, it is very easy as the client to stifle their creativity. I saw that in architecture all the time. Like, you're an architect, you want to design something beautiful, and the clients are paying the bill, so they have no concepts of design or space planning or anything like that, but that's what they like.
Right.
And if they're paying the bills, you're like, "All right, I'll design this. It's going to look like crap, but you know what? You're paying my bill, so whatever." So I would just suggest that if you go to an artist, if you want to develop a better rapport with them and get the best work possible, trust them. Just give them a concept. If you're going to dictate every line and every color, then it's not going to be an enjoyable experience for either party, so keep that in mind.
Awesome. Love it. And then you do have upcoming tattoo plans. You're going to head down to Austin, and what do you got planned for that one?
Yeah, so I typically surprise my parents for their birthdays every year, and don't worry, this is not a surprise this year because I told them anyway, but going down to Austin, Texas to work with a tattoo artist named Tony Colon. His handle is X Trophy Tattoos. He specializes in neo-traditional work, and he uses Fusion Ink, which is a company that produces really high-quality colored ink. I don't have a lot of color on my body, minus this arm, so I wanted to go to an artist that specializes in neo-traditional. And if you don't know what that is, just check out his Instagram. It's amazing. And he is amazing with line weights and depth of feel and just making it look more like a piece of art rather than a tattoo. So we're going to be doing, the main focus on this leg sleeve is going to be my 2 cats. I have 2 Russian blues, and everything else will be tulips, roses, and cannabis fan leaves. And once I gave him the concept, which was really difficult to get a session with him because he is a famous tattoo artist, he just flipped. He was like, oh my God, awesome. And it goes back to my original point, is that I don't need to know what it looks like. I'm giving him ideas, and I'm going to let him run with flow, composition, all that stuff. So I'm like, I trust the guy, I trust his artistic ability, and so yeah, super stoked about that. And we're looking to maybe get this done in maybe 3 sessions. So.
Love it. And you're right, these artists are just incredible, and they can do things that we can never even imagine. Yeah. So look forward to seeing that. But other than your next tattoo, what's next for you in your fitness and nutrition journey?
For me, it's just my full-time job keeps me busy, so I manage this CrossFit gym. I work for a startup upstairs called Brainstride. What we're just trying to do is create a product for gyms, physical therapy clinics, physicians, that have practices, to basically offer a way for people to get metrics on not only physical assessment stuff like body composition and physical, strength, flexibility, coordination, whatever, balance, normal things that you would get tested in a physical therapy office, but to also give you reports on your cognition. And I think that's one thing that no gym focuses on. Everything is neck down, in my opinion. But it's our argument that if you can't remember your name or where your car keys are, then what's the point of how much you deadlift or how fast you run a mile or whatever. So for us, we're just kind of fleshing out that program. So it is still in its infancy stages, and we're just doing some beta testing with clients in the gym right now. So that keeps me busy, but then I also have my online nutritional business where I coach people remotely through nutrition. That's always been ongoing. I have sponsorships with companies to produce content for social media on Instagram and TikTok. So that is, honestly, that takes up all my time.
Yeah, you're busy.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, posting 3 to 5 TikToks a day is, it's insane. And then I'm most excited about a passion project that my friend and co-host, Claire Huntington, she's up in Canada. You can follow her handle is CBear as an animal, B-E-A-R, Huntington. And you can follow our podcast we're starting called Origins Unknown Podcast. You can follow us on Instagram. We're going to be discussing everything revolving around adoption. Since she's an adoptee, I'm an adoptee. So we want to try to create a community for adoptees, which is lacking today. And I think adoption is another thing that people won't talk about. It's very sensitive, it's intimate, it's personal, and sometimes there are bad situations with adoption and foster care. So what we want to try to do is create a community where people can either heal, learn, feel connected, feel part of a community that sees them and understands them. But more importantly, above all, I feel like we are at a time now where this country is, especially this country, is so massively divided. I think we can never find, it's so hard to find common ground now. And I think that adoption is a topic that supersedes your political views or any other thing that you believe in. And if we can start a conversation there, then we can start to become more open-minded, accepting, and as you've heard a lot, we can start to see people again that might not see eye to eye with us, and that's okay, and that's the thing. So I think that's going to happen for sure, and we've got an overwhelming response without having any content really. So I think it's only going to pick up, and it's more of a passion project. But Claire and I always jokingly say, like, man, well, this would be an amazing full-time job gig, and who knows, maybe that might happen.
See where it takes you.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, I'm excited for you, Chris. It's been great getting to know you over the past few years, and we'll definitely be following you on your fitness journey, seeing your new tattoo, and checking in on your podcast.
Thank you, man.
Awesome.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
me.